in order for you to really engage with somebody who's not in the same room as you, it's like you have to reach into the camera and grab their attention and pull them in. So it's more intense than speaking in person. We have to demand more intentionality and more engagement. You've got to ask for it and create it in a really intentional way.
Hey there, and welcome to yet another episode of the World of Presentations podcast, brought to you by us at Presentation Agency 356 Labs. Yes, we not only develop and train people from some of the biggest brands in the world how to prepare and deliver truly effective presentations, but we also organize this very interesting conference called Present to Succeed. I'm Boris, the founder of 356 Labs, and your host for today's episode. And with me, I have yet another incredible guest from our industry. So, who am I speaking with today? I have a fellow podcaster with me, a speaker coach, and overall presentation fanatic, as I like to say. Her name is, or she calls herself, or she told me to call her, Sally Z. All right, everybody, Sally Z is in the house. Her podcast is called This Moved Me, and she's working with speakers, presenters, and performance on their content and delivery. And that passion, by the way, I would say allowed her to move people from organizations like US Bank, Cargill, TEDx, and many, many more. Sally, welcome to the podcast. How are things going? Let me remove those notes here.
Thanks, Boris. I'm so excited to be here. I am a fanatic. I am a
Yeah.
speaking fanatic. Always have been. Love being on stage. I'm not gonna lie. It's fun. But I love coaching people too. Both sides of it really fuel me. So yeah, let's talk. Let's
Let's
dig
talk.
in.
Before we talk, you probably have heard in some of the previous episodes. I'm not going to be asking you and checking on that one, but but we always ask people who are on the podcast, like, if you look at our industry, which is a very small industry, obviously,
Yeah.
more or less everyone knows each other, which is kind of nice, I would say. But every one of us got into this presentation world by some very strange coincidence. Like, no one went into the presentation industry chasing that industry, going out of college saying, I'm going to be doing presentations in one way or the other. How did it happen for you?
Well, I might be one of the rare people who always
Really?
had it in my heart
All right.
to focus on speaking. I did high school speech, forever ago. And so the world of high school speech is very precise, very specific. I worked with truly some of the most incredible coaches in the country and went to nationals, had the full experience. So I learned the intricacies and the poise and how to write a persuasive speech, like so fine-tuned the details of it, and then went to college and focused on theater. So which is similar but
Yeah.
very, very different.
Yeah.
The theater world is much more about, you take somebody else's script and you find your intention in it. You find your own physical expression in somebody else's script, and it's much more authentic and it's really of the moment. And as I shifted out of college, I thought, I want to get back to the speaking world. I want to take my theater experience and meld it with the intricacies and the nuances and the details of speaking really, really well, and bring it together in the world of speaking. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't really know, like, what is this job? What could this be? I wasn't like, I'm going to be a speaker coach, but that's what I had my eye on. And so when I ended up getting a job as a speaker, talking to kids, I was just cloud nine. It felt like this this coming together of all of my gifts and talents. And within about a year of being there, I had coached the boss and was assigned coaching everybody else on staff. So I've always done speaking and speaker coaching and really, really love both of them. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I landed in this industry early on in my career and fell in love with it, have been focused on it truly ever since. And it feels very on purpose for me. I'm not like, well, this is a temporary thing just because, there's opportunity or blah blah blah. I'm just like, this is what I was put on earth to do. So I'm just going to keep going.
You were consistent. Let's put it this way.
Yeah,
You're an
it's true.
exception to the rule and you
I
are
know. I
consistent.
know.
All right. So my first question, let's dive deep as you said at the beginning. You work with so many people from so many industries
Yeah.
and you work with them on the content and the story that they need to
Mhm.
present, they need to deliver. Our listeners are people from the business world. We know that
Mhm.
obviously our community is also listening, meaning the presentation community is listening also. But most of the people that are listening to this one are going to be the marketing people, the HRs, the PRs, the IT, the designers,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
They're one of your clients, let's
Mhm.
say
Mhm.
one of them becomes your clients right now as we speak somehow.
Yeah.
They have to deliver a presentation very, very, let's say after 2 or 3 weeks. So they're an exception to the
Yeah.
rule also,
Yeah.
because I believe that most of your clients are, hey, I have something tomorrow.
Yeah.
Can you do can you help me? So they are approaching you very, very early on. They have 1 month
Yep.
before their talk. What are the first few things that you are going to ask them to do and why? Like, what's the behind the scenes? What can
That's
they learn?
such an important question because the answer to so many of my questions as a coach is, well, it depends. It depends. Like,
That's
how
it.
would I?
Coming
Well,
from the
it
IT
depends.
world, I was an IT guy, and every single time when someone was asking me something, I was like, "It depends."
It
And that
depends,
is
right?
one of the most annoying responses in the IT world, by the way, because no
Right.
one in the IT was giving the second part of the sentence. Like, it depends on. Everyone
Right.
stopped at "it depends."
Well, let me give you the second half
Let's
of
go.
that answer. I think it all depends on context. So, which is kind of a meta answer, I
Yeah.
suppose. But figuring out the context, and what I mean by context, I'm going to give you an acronym that I use with my clients. So when they hire me to come in, the first thing I do is I want to understand what I call SASI. It's an acronym that is SASI.
All right.
And that acronym stands for speaker, audience, space, and idea. So,
All right.
oftentimes we jump right to the idea. What's this about? What's the content? Where what are the slides going to look like? All that. We focus so much on the idea. But before we can do that well, we first have to figure out who you are as a speaker, what particular gifts you bring to this moment and this particular audience. So there's this little Venn diagram that I see in my head, right? Who is this person? Who is this audience? Where is this magic place where your particular gifts can serve this particular audience in this particular moment?
Mm,
So those are the first two. And then you get to space, which I think is a completely underutilized focus area. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How can we set up the space, even virtually,
mm,
so that we are creating an intentional experience from moment one? We are not leaving anything to chance. We are being thoughtful about how they move, uh, what we want them to feel,
yeah.
and what we want them to get out of it. And space can do that. It is such an underutilized aspect of presentation development and design. So um we've got to talk about space before we can talk about what the content is or idea. So
Hmm.
speaker, audience, space, and idea. Once I have that, then we can come up with a strategy on, okay, what do we need to focus on? How can we help you create the experience for your audience that you are trying to create?
Yeah. So let me. That's interesting because In the questions that I prepared and that I
Yeah.
have sent you very politely today, a few hours before the podcast. That's, by the way, the experience of our our fellows that are joining our podcast
I
a
don't
few
even need
hours before the
questions
talk.
for us. So I was like, oh, awesome. Great.
Yeah. So at least you have them, like at least there
Yeah.
is something. Otherwise, it's going to be a complete improv from start to finish. Even though this one is also one of those. Anyway, I think that you have experienced for sure using the SASE acronym here. I think that there will be for sure people who will say, especially when you mentioned space, and especially when you said that it's so important, I really want us to jump into that one. There will be people listening to this podcast that will immediately say, okay, this is all right, this is yet again this those type of advices that are only relevant and applicable to a TED talk or something close to a TED talk. Is that applicable, like everything that you're saying, is that applicable to that audience that we have, the business people? And let's give them like an example, even if it's
Absolutely.
needed for us to brainstorm it together. Like, is it
Absolutely.
first applicable?
I love it. Okay, absolutely. It is applicable to any time you are giving a message to another person. You could use it in a conversation. You can use it in the conference room. You can use it when you're doing a pitch. You could use it for your quarterly
Updates, yeah.
meetup, your internal all teams, all hands experience. Like you could use it in any situation. In fact, I urge you to, because what you'll realize is the differences in context. Are they sitting down? Do I want them to be do we want to sit in a circle? Think about how the shift in space or context creates such a different feel. So here's a fun example. I was doing a workshop with a company, and we were going through the SASE acronym, and we were talking about how space in particular can change the experience that your audience has. And somebody raised their hand and said, we're really struggling with this one meeting that we have again and again. It's not going well. And I think maybe space has something to do with it. I said, well, tell me about this meeting. And she said, well, it's our monthly management meeting. And so everybody gathers in the big cafeteria. And I'm like, tell me about the space. She's like, everybody's sitting around these tables in the cafeteria. And we decided to have the managers, not the person speaking, but everybody else, the rest of the managers are standing around the edge of the room. And I was like, okay, why? And she said, well, we want to give them space to talk together and not feel like they're being, watched by the managers. And I said, well, how do you think it feels for everybody sitting at those tables to have the managers standing around them? It feels like they're being watched. And she was like, yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. So I'm like, what would happen if your managers came and sat with the people, with the employees, so that when you're having discussions as a part of this meeting, they're a part of it? How would that change it? Well, about a month later, I heard back from her. She sent me an email and she was like, Sally, we changed up the space completely. We shifted the intention. All the managers are now sitting with people around their tables for this big meeting, and it has completely changed the feel of that experience. We're getting more input, there's more engagement, there's more collaboration. It has changed the feel of the team. And I was like, awesome. That is so great. They just hadn't thought about how that was the feeling it was creating. So
Yeah.
if we don't take time to really think through all of those elements in any situation, any context, any scenario, you might be missing something. You might be creating an experience for your employees, for your teammates, for your bosses that you're not intending to create. So it just brings a little intentionality there.
And so it sounds like just one change in the space and the setup
Yeah,
without changing the presentation per se
exactly.
can actually make that presentation way more successful and way
Absolutely.
more engaging, effective, what have you.
Yeah, what you just said.
Hear everyone?
Exactly.
You hear everyone? So what about the virtual, by the way? Like
Yeah.
everyone nowadays is more or less 100%
Mhm,
virtual.
mhm.
Probably there will be virtual for who knows. We may be,
Yep.
I don't know. Like we
It's
can
never
guess,
going
but
away. It's
yeah,
never going away. Yep.
yeah.
We
So
we
what about virtual? Like when you have to take in mind the virtual space, what do you
yeah.
advise the people that are working with you?
Yep. I want you to bring that same intentionality. Now, depending on the platform, sometimes that is more challenging because for Zoom, for example, the audience has control, more control over what they see. You have some as the presenter, but they have more. But I think it's worth taking a moment and saying, here's the setup that I recommend for you. In order for you to experience this, in the most engaging way. My suggestion for you is to go up to that top bar, click down to view, and click side by side. That way, you're
Mm,
going to be able to see me right next to my slides or whatever. I'm making that up, but you
yeah,
could
yeah,
create that sort of intention with your virtual space. I also think virtually we're missing so many opportunities to play some music, to use a system like Ecamm or another technology or mode that allows us to come off more professionally and to not see this as just another Zoom meeting, because
yeah,
we have to elevate those opportunities, and a little intention goes a really long way in the virtual setup, and the bar for engagement is even higher,
yeah,
because of course we all know it's so easy for people to just go click on other tabs or pick up their phone. They don't have to. They don't have to be engaged in the same way that they might feel compelled out of politeness to
yeah,
if they were in person. So I think the virtual space is even more important to be intentional and not just do what we've always done. I feel like that is the the push that I'm always giving, especially to my corporate clients, is just because it's the way you've always done it doesn't mean that's the way that you should keep doing it.
yeah,
Create the new, this is the way we do it.
yeah.
And you can
By the way, when
every
you're saying
presentation.
yeah, when you're saying all of that, and I want to come back after a second to the software probably that you're mentioning, Ecamm, because I personally
Yeah.
don't know that one. Let me know
Mm,
what I think everyone will benefit what this is. I can guess potentially what it could be, but
sure.
I
Happy
would
to
I'll
tell you
leave it
about
to
it.
you. I will leave it to you as the person who mentioned it. One of the very interesting things, I don't remember which was the book exactly, but it was all about presenting virtually and virtual presentations, etc. I have to find it, but there was one quote from the author of the book that I think more or less sounds exactly like what you're saying. That
Hmm.
nowadays people, I'm not going to quote it like it won't be a one-to-one quote here, but it was more or less saying that because it's online, people who are presenting online, that's their excuse for not being good, right?
Yeah,
Just because it's online, they find a reason. They use the fact that it's online for not delivering in a good way, which
exactly.
is, I don't think
Not
that's
good.
right.
Not good. Yeah, I
Not good.
mean, people have lowered the bar a little bit.
Yeah,
And they're like, "I don't need to stand up and practice because I'm
yeah.
just gonna be sitting on my butt and I can have my notes right here." Nobody's really looking at the camera, and I'm like, "Look at the camera, please. Just that little
Yeah,
thing. Know where your camera is and look at it." It sounds so simple, but it
yeah,
makes such a big difference, and when you have multiple monitors and the people you're talking to are over here, but your camera's here,
yeah,
that it takes practice to remember that there's a human on the other side of that camera. This camera right here. Like, I know you're here, but Boris is actually right here,
yeah.
you
Correct.
know?
Correct. I'm actually going to find the quote after maybe a second or two. It's that I'm opening a presentation right here. But there was a
Yeah.
little bit about the software that you mentioned. What is
Yeah.
it all about? Ecamm.
Yes. So Ecamm is a live streaming software.
All right.
So it allows you to kind of set up the experience of your live stream. So you can live stream into a Zoom meeting. You can live stream into Facebook, into YouTube, into all kinds of different platforms. And it just looks really, really good. So you can add in overlays. You can upload a PowerPoint or other software or slide share that you've got. You can um, show movies, you can do all kinds of different things, and it sets it up really as a show. So you almost are producing a show as you go. So you
Mm,
can click different scenes. So one scene is your intro, and there's music, and there's an overlay that comes in with your title and name. And then the next scene, you screen share into a presentation, but you are in the corner in like a little circle, still being able to be present while your slides are showing. So it just gives you, there's a million things you can do with it. It's really fun. It's not super difficult to learn. It takes a little bit of an on ramp, but it's not, if I can do it, anybody else can do it. I'm not super techy, but it
yeah,
has every time I live stream with Ecamm, people go, "That looks amazing. What is that software?"
yeah.
Any of us can do it, and you can connect fancy cameras with it and all the things. You can do all the things.
Yeah,
They're
I've already found it and copy pasted the link to their platform so that we put it in the show notes. So it's called
awesome.
Ecamm with double M, correct?
Yes, I
Yeah.
would. Yep, two M's. I will say I think it's only for Macs. This
Yes,
might be a
that's correct.
problem. Might be a problem for some people, but there's another one. I think the PC version is called like OBM.
OBS Studio, yes.
OBS. Yeah, see?
Yeah,
I don't know.
OBS. Yeah,
I'm a
OBS
Mac
looks
person, so
yeah, OBS looks a little bit more not user friendly than this one.
yeah,
And I will personally double check and test this one on our Macs here so that I have the kind of the
awesome.
experience with it. The OBS is quite professional, I would say. And when you
Okay.
open it for the first time, you're like, if you're not an AV guy, you're like,
Yeah.
where
Ooh.
am I exactly? What's
No.
happening to me? Like there is a learning curve. Let's just put it
Oh,
this
no.
way. But yeah, thankfully there is a lot of resources and a lot of
Yeah.
tutorials and stuff
Yeah.
out there on the web to find how to use OBS Studio in a
Cool.
in a way, in a professional way. Let's put it this way. Reading the quote, it's from David Kerringham, and he wrote the book "A Better Online Presenting." So the quote is, and I'm quoting now:
Yeah.
biggest issue is that people take online as an excuse for lower standards.
Mhm.
Not a good idea,
There it is.
everybody. Not a
Put
good
that in a
idea.
quote bubble.
Yeah.
It's
So
true.
let's talk now that we discussed the SASSY acronym. Let's jump a little bit on the delivery part because that
Yeah.
part nowadays is also important, especially online. You mentioned it's even more, the engagement is even more complicated and even more important. What are the things that you coach your customers to focus on? Like, are there any pre-steps, any, like, what's going on? What should
Mhm.
people pay attention to when we're talking about delivery?
Yeah. No, it is really, really important. But I will say, I think, and this brings me to the first thing I want to share with you, but a lot of people over obsess with delivery in ways that don't actually help them. And
Mm,
speaking as a high school speech geek, we what we learned in high school speech does not actually help us in the real world of presenting as an adult when the goal is for us to feel connected. So if that is the goal, and that is my goal as a coach, even in a corporate setting where you're like, this isn't a TEDx talk, all of the reasons why people are like, no, we're going to do it differently because
yeah.
we're in a corporate environment. I'm like, people still want to feel connected to you and connected to what you're saying. And it ultimately comes down to delivery. You can have a perfectly written script or talk. All your bullet points can be all buttoned up. Your slides can be perfect. But if you are not embodied in what you're saying, if you cannot authentically connect with what you're saying, it doesn't matter. People are
Hmm.
like, eh, fine. Might be interesting. They might kind of take in the information, but they're not going to take action. They're not going to be moved by it. They're not going to engage more deeply in what you're trying to do with that moment. So, I really simultaneously want people to dig deeper into their delivery focus and also let it go more. And that balance is difficult. It's a challenge, but the thing that kind of helps, that is a guiding force for me when I work with people on delivery, is one question, and that is it distracting?
What do you
Is there
mean?
something in your delivery that is distracting? Is
Oh.
there a mannerism that is distracting? Is there a filler word that you use again and again and again and it becomes distracting?
Mm.
Is there something that you're doing with your hands or your body that is distracting? Are you, and you're probably not even aware of it, you're rocking, right? There's when we all do all kinds of different things. I think there's room for us to show up and be imperfect humans. I think it's important for us to just show up and connect on a human to human level. And so I don't want to get rid of all your filler words, and I don't want to perfect your gestures and choreograph you. That is not my goal. But I am keeping an eye out for what is distracting. Because if it's distracting, they're no longer hearing you, they're not engaged in what you're saying, they're analyzing you. They're pulled
Yeah.
out of the presentation and now they're going, oh, they keep saying that thing, and they're not listening to you anymore.
Yeah.
So that is the compass I want people to use when they're focused on their delivery. Is it distracting?
Yeah.
Okay, once you can shift out of whether or not something is distracting, well, then you can focus really on connecting with what you're saying and letting emotion drive what it is that you're saying. You can tell when somebody cares about what they're saying. One of the things that I want to establish with people early on is, how do you want your audience to feel at the
After.
end of this? Right.
Okay.
So I was working with one of my corporate clients last week, and I said, how do you want people to feel when you do this tomorrow? And she said, excited. And I was like, okay, how are you feeling about this right now? And she was like, I feel fine. I feel a little, and I was like, if you cannot get excited about what you're talking about, there's no way that they are going to be excited.
Yeah.
So it is an emotionally driven experience, even in business. In fact, what I would say is it is such a lost opportunity when we think, because we're in business, we have to be perfect. We can't screw up. We cannot be fully human. We've got to be emotionally reined in, instead of showing some passion, or you're jazzed about something. Whatever that emotion is that you want them to experience, you have to tap into it yourself. And that's
Okay.
vulnerable, can feel
Yeah.
really challenging for people.
Can we go back very quickly about the distractions, because I think that's very
Yeah.
interesting thing. Like a lot of people, as you mentioned, especially when they're starting their careers as speakers or presenters or trainers or whatever it may be, as you mentioned, sometimes you don't even know that those things happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you need someone from outside, be that your colleague, be that, I don't know, a coach, be that
Yep.
a family member, whoever, right? Whoever, to tell you, hey, something is happening.
Yeah.
Like if some of our listeners are hearing that feedback, that they are moving a lot, let's say, or they're
Mhm.
playing, let's say the ladies sometimes play with their hair, right? Or
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
What would you advise them? How should they act? What is the next step for them?
Right. Well, it's important that everybody develops what I call an accurate mirror for themselves. It's
All right.
really, really, really hard to do.
Mm,
Most of the time, we are too hard on ourselves. And, like, it's like the first time you listen to yourself or see yourself on video.
yeah, it's awful.
First time I saw myself on video, I was like, I have a crazy face. I'm very expressive. I mean, I knew that, but then when you see it, you're like, oh my gosh. And so one of the things that I'm always underlining for my speakers is the rest of us are way more used to you than you are. Okay, so just uh, I want you to bring some accurate self awareness to yourself. But if you are somebody who spins out into despair, or your sudden self consciousness is getting in the way of you being able to really show up, then you really have to lean on other people to help you without you going off into like, I hate myself and I can't believe I can't go up there. And I'm like, I didn't, it happens a lot. I'm not a coach who's like, we're going to sit and watch your video unless I trust that we can give ourselves an accurate mirror. In other
Mm,
words, seeing what's what's beautiful and effective and impactful, and what you're doing really well, so that I can pinpoint for you. Have you noticed that you tend to uh, go to stage left again and again and again? You've totally forgotten about stage right over here. Did you notice that? Because we tend to, everybody tends to favor one side over the other for whatever reason. And, without that being a source of shame for people, because honestly,
mm,
that's what we tap into when we're talking about this stuff. So having somebody who you trust, who you feel safe with, to be able to like sit in that space with them.
yeah,
So a coworker, a peer, it's rarely your boss, just because it feels like a credibility moment, that something's at stake in
yeah,
those moments. But somebody who you can sit with on that, which I think it's so powerful to have a coach you can turn to on that. um, but another tool, let me just share with you a tool that I was just talking about on my
yeah,
podcast
yeah.
last week. It's this tool, I call it, you can map your talk. And it's a way to bring some self-awareness without being caught up in everything. So all you'd have to do is grab a piece of paper. Let's see if I can do this in a way you guys could see it. So you grab a piece of paper and a pen or a marker, some kind of big marker. There we go. And you're just listening. So let's say that you were worried, you got some feedback about your pitch.
Mm,
Okay, like, yeah, your pitch is pretty monotone and it was distracting in whatever way. Or you're somebody who ends every sentence up. So you end up sounding like you're asking a question, even though it's not a question, right? We all have some tendencies. So you've gotten some feedback about your pitch. So to bring a little self awareness and become a little bit more of an accurate mirror for yourselves, you're going to listen to yourself, and you've got a midline generally
yeah,
as you're listening, and all you're tracking is your pitch. You're not listening for anything else. You're just kind of tracking your pitch when it goes up and when it goes down. Or if you're like, if you notice, oh, I'm just keep going up and then whatever. Who knows what it
yeah.
looks like? It's not meant
Perfect.
to be super accurate. It's just to give you a picture, to give you an idea, to bring a little self-awareness without sending you off into the like pit of despair. You know what I mean? But that can be helpful for people to start becoming aware. And then once you're aware, oftentimes it's just about taking a pause in the moment and making an intentional new choice, which sounds easy, but it just takes
Yeah,
practice.
yeah. But I love what you said, that you need to like, you are only listening to your recording for that.
Yeah.
Like you isolate absolutely everything else, and you focus all of your attention not on your slides, not on anything else, but on that one issue that was reported.
Yeah.
In a way to
Yeah.
you, or you found yourself. That I
Mm-hmm.
think is super super important. I think that a lot of people are trying to, like, especially when you see your recording, when you see yourself on a recording, you are like, wait a minute, what is this? That's not me. How is that possible? Did I really do that? That's
Yeah.
strange. And they try to attack so many things at once
Mm-hmm.
that at the end they end up doing almost nothing until they
Yeah.
get and say, okay, let me, yeah.
Or you get overwhelmed and it starts to eat at your self-confidence.
Mm,
And if we can't show up with confidence in the moment, it really doesn't matter how excellent everything else is.
yeah. Delivery is a very interesting
It's
part of the
deep.
whole.
It is. It's deep. It gets at deep stuff for people. I mean, half the time as a speaker coach in the corporate setting, we're not talking about speaking. We're talking about how people feel about their bodies. They're talking
Mm,
about adrenaline response and what happens and sort of the embarrassment or shame or struggles around that. We're talking about vulnerability. We're talking about what it's like to feel like you're potentially on the line.
yep.
So it's big. It's big.
What about, by the way, one last here. What about the differences between, like, now probably all of your customers, or at least hopefully many of them, are asking you, hey, wait a minute, I have to now speak online via Zoom or Teams or any other Google Meet for that, whichever it is. Like, are what do you advise them in regards to, hey, when we were doing this for a presentation on the stage or
Yeah.
in a boardroom,
Yeah.
that's a little bit different now in the virtual
Yeah.
world. you know are there any, like, what are the similarities, or probably what are the differences? Because I think that the differences are what people need to hear. Because I don't know what's your take on it, but I still think that a lot of the business people that we work with, their initial reaction and response towards online presentations is, wait a minute, that's easy. I'm
Mm,
at my home
right.
and should be
Hmm.
easy,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I think the to me the biggest shift in thinking that people need to make as they commit to virtual presenting is that it should be taxing.
Mm,
We kind of like step back like, oh, this is easier uh, because I've got all these whatever. I'm not there. I don't even really have to face people. I don't really have to feel the same kind of response that we feel when we're in person. But in order for you to really engage with somebody who's not in the same room as you, it's like you have to reach into the camera and grab their attention and pull them in. So it's more intense than speaking in person. We have to demand more intentionality and more engagement. You've got to ask for it and create it in a really intentional way. You're
mm,
managing so many more things at the same time because
yeah,
the communication channels it's not just the feedback that you're sensing in the room, it's what's happening in the chat. It's people's cameras turning on and off. It's
yeah,
asking them to answer a poll. I mean, it just has changed the way that we can engage, and it should exhaust people. Really,
yeah,
you know that you have invested fully when you're exhausted. Um, yeah, I think one of the shifts and the pushes that I'm constantly giving people is stand up. Stand up when you are presenting virtually.
yep,
If you would be standing up in person, stand up virtually
yeah,
because it affects the way that you can communicate. We are not neck up speakers. And virtually when people sit down for a virtual presentation and they're like, they can only see me from here up. I'm like, stand up and remember that you speak with your whole body. And I can tell when somebody is engaged physically, even if I only see them from the shoulders up. You can
yep,
tell, right?
yep.
Yeah.
Very easy. Yeah, there are a lot of excuses again around that. At least I have heard quite some, and to each one of them, I was like, that's an excuse, right? I mean, I have heard some stuff that, how can I be standing up when I need to be taking notes? And I'm like,
Yeah.
You seriously asking that? Like,
Yeah.
seriously, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're 30 years of age and you're asking stuff like that. Like, seriously,
Yeah.
come on,
Well,
guys.
The good news is I think it has democratized speaking. And
Yep.
so it's brought in so many more people into speaking because it feels a little safer. I
Yep.
think it's harder than they think to be successful, to be memorable, to be engaging. It's way harder. But I think more people are willing. I've worked with more corporate clients who are new to speaking because they're doing it for the first time
Yeah.
virtually. They weren't given those opportunities when it was in person. And now they're being given those opportunities. So I think that's powerful and that's good ultimately because people are seeing themselves as speakers more so than they were a year and a half ago. But we have to work on the quality of it. We can't
Yeah.
just read
Plus,
the
companies are
script.
more demanding, I think, nowadays.
Mm,
Way more companies are asking their people to speak and present online and to
yeah.
communicate and present at conferences, events, panels, etc. And so,
Mhm.
I when we were organizing the event, we more or less branded it in a way where we were saying, "Hey, this event is for all of the people in the business world that are being asked to present, whether they like it or not."
I love that.
Because it's the truth. It's the truth. Like, many people don't like to do it, but they're
Yeah.
being asked to, and it's just part of
Yeah.
their work nowadays.
Yep.
So, one question before the last one:
Yeah.
who else should we get on the podcast? Let's see whether or not you're going to repeat someone from our previous guests.
Oh
Just one
gosh.
name
I
there. Try.
the
I will tell you. I'll be honest if we had them.
Okay, 2 people pop to mind. One of
Okay.
them, I'm pretty sure you've had on the show, and that is
Let's check.
Carmen Simon.
I tried to
Okay,
get to her,
okay,
but it was not possible. All
okay.
right, so
She's
we'll try that.
fabulous. She
Yes,
is
I
so
know.
fabulous. The other person I thought of was David Scott.
Nope. No.
Okay, so write down David Scott's name. David Scott is a very prolific keynote speaker, speaks all over the world, but he's also a marketer. So he brings this really thoughtful marketing approach, and he just wrote a book about virtual speaking in particular. So he's got some really interesting expertise. He's also just a delivery dynamo.
All
And
right.
he's like a big stage guy. So he goes all out, 110%. He speaks all at Tony Robbins's conferences all the time. So he's a showman. And how he's applied that to the virtual world, I think, is compelling and important and interesting, and kind of ups all of our game.
Yeah, I can see the book is called Standout Virtual
Yeah,
Events: How to Create an Experience That something something something.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll
yeah.
double check that one
That's
for
him.
sure, and we'll try to reach out to him. The
Yeah,
last
tell
question.
him,
Yeah,
tell both of them that I sent you,
of course
because
we will.
maybe
We're going to
they'll.
tag you all on LinkedIn for that one.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
Love
there
it.
is no going back now. Our marketing person will do that for us. So, best play, two-part question: what is the best place for people to connect? And the second part: which is the where should people find more about your work?
I love it. Okay. Well, you can find out more about me at bemoved.com. So my company is called Be Moved by Sally Z. So you can get all kinds of resources and information there. So check out there if you want more info. But here's what I would love for you to do is, if you are somebody who wants to leverage speaking to grow your impact, I'd love for you to come join me in my Emerging Speaker Society. It's a private Facebook group, it's free. And we do lots of trainings in there, daily inspiration. It's just a really wonderful group where we get to be fanatics about speaking and think about not just doing it well, but how we're leveraging it to grow our impact and our authority and our revenue. So if you are internal corporate, you might not be as interested in the revenue side of it, but if you are external and growing your own business and impact, there's some really important resources in there.
Okay, you need to send us a link to that
Sure.
group
Yeah. You can
just to be
find
on
it
the safe
really
side.
simply. Yeah. Bemoved.com
That
forward
one is
slash
easy. I have it.
ESS. for Emerging Speaker Society. So I can put it in the chat. Should I do that?
Brilliant. I will copy paste it from the chat
Okay.
afterwards. Brilliant. Okay. Sally, that was wonderful. I have to
Oh,
say, 43 minutes already
we
gone.
can keep going too, Boris.
Yeah, we need to go back at it at some point. That is
For
guaranteed.
sure, for sure. Well, I should have you on my show.
All right, we'll figure it out.
All right.
We'll, we'll
That'd be
figure it
great.
out. So everyone, so that we wrap this episode up and not waste a lot of time here, all of the links, all of the guests that Sally recommended, all of those great presenters or people from the industry who she recommended will be in the show notes. Also, we are going to tag them also on LinkedIn. But all of her, the private Facebook group plus her website will be in the show notes all across every channel where you will be able to find that podcast, both on YouTube and all of the audio channels and on our blog. So go check her, check also the podcast, the website, and everything else. Sally, again, thanks for joining. That was super nice.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Boris. It was really fun.
Absolutely. And everyone, in the meantime, also, while you're checking Sally's work, check our work at 356labs.com, and surely the conference Present to Succeed will be happy. We'll be happy if you join us there. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you like it. And yeah, see you in the next one.